Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Rev Sally, and I am the Associate Minister of this congregation. I'm so glad to be here with you, streaming live from our sanctuary on Green Street this morning. Our congregation's mission is to build community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace. We're a church of many theologies that values deeds above creeds, a church that strives to build a beloved community in the here and now. You may be joining us today from across the world or from just down the street. Wherever you are, please know that this community, this service is here for you, in whatever form you find us. If you want to follow along with a written order of service, you can find that link just below this video on our website. And if you want to chat with your fellow UUCUC members and friends, you can find the live stream chat box on our YouTube page. Remember that because we are live, there's still time to make your own contributions to our shared joys and sorrows later in the service. To do that, just email your message to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. This congregation chooses to begin every Sunday with a formal acknowledgement of the indigenous nations of this land. It's a practice that connects us to the history of this place and to our own responsibilities as stewards and members of a wider community. Wherever you are listening from today, please bring to mind the indigenous peoples and histories of your place. There will be a moment of silence just after the acknowledgement. We recognize and acknowledge that we gather today on indigenous land, taken through deception, coercion, and violence. We acknowledge the continued displacement and oppression of indigenous communities, and strive to lift up Native commitments to survival, identity, and the protection of this world. Thank you. And now we will light our chalice, after which I invite you to sing together hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, to mark these time together as special and worthy. If you have a chalice or candle, we invite you to join us in lighting it and speaking these words as printed on your screen in order of service. As we kindle this flame, we reignite our commitment to the mission of our congregation, to build community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace.
This is the part in our service when we like to tell a story or do an activity that opens up our time together to be accessible to people of all ages and stages. I'm filming this part ahead of time from home because we're going to be reading a book, and I want to be able to be up close to the camera and show you all the pictures as I read. Today we are reading On Beyond Zebra by Dr. Seuss, published by Random House. Said Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell, my very young friend who is learning to spell, "The A is for ape, and the B is for bear. The C is for camel, the H is for hare. The M is for mouse, and the R is for rat. I know all the 26 letters like that." "Through to Z is for zebra. I know them all well," said Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell. "So now I know everything anyone knows, from beginning to end, from the start to the close, because Z is as far as the alphabet goes." Then he almost fell flat on his face on the floor when I picked up the chalk and drew one letter more. A letter he never had dreamed of before. And I said, "You can stop if you want with the Z, because most people stop with the Z, but not me. In the places I go, there are things that I see that I never could spell if I stopped with the Z. I'm telling you this because you're one of my friends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends." "My alphabet starts with this letter called Yuz. It's the letter I use to spell Yuzamatuz. You'll be sort of surprised what there is to be found once you go beyond Z and start poking around." "If you stay home with zebra, you're stuck in a rut, but on beyond zebra, you're anything but. Why, I know a fine fancy letter called fuddle. I use it in spelling Miss Fuddle-dee-Duddle. And oh, what a bird of a bird of a bird of! Her tail is the longest that's ever been heard of. So long and so fancy she'd be in a fix if she didn't have helpers. It takes about 6 to tag along hoisting Miss Fuddle-dee-Duddle's wonderful tail out of muddle-dee-puddles." When you go beyond zebra, who knows? There's no telling what wonderful things you might find yourself spelling. Like Quan is for quandary, who lives on a shelf in a hole in the ocean alone by himself. And he worries each day from the dawn's early light. And he worries, just worries, far into the night. He just stands there and worries. He simply can't stop. Is his top side his bottom, or bottom side top? And Zatz is the letter I use to spell Zatzit, whose nose is so high that most nobody pats it. And patting his lonely old nose is the least that a fellow could do for this fine friendly beast. So to get there and do it, I built an invention, the 3-seater Zatzit nose patting extension. If you try to drive one, you'll certainly see why most people stop at the Z, but not me. The places I took him, I tried hard to tell young Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell. A few brand new wonderful words he might spell. I led him around and I tried hard to show there are things beyond Z that most people don't know. I took him past zebra as far as I could, and I think perhaps maybe I did him some good. Because finally he said, "This is really great stuff, and I guess the old alphabet isn't enough." Now the letters he uses are something to see. Most people still stop at the Z, but not he. The end. Each Sunday here at UUCUC, we make space to share the joys and sorrows closest to our hearts. What joys and sorrows do you carry into our time together today? Let them rise to the surface now, and if you wish me to share them aloud, there's still some time to send them in to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. Together, we're going to sing our blessing song, Long Time Son, and then I will share aloud the joys and sorrows of this community. A Joy from Gail Cohen. Congratulations to my daughter Karen, who just got the letter saying she had been accepted into a new Capella PhD program starting in April. Couldn't be prouder. A Joy from Ursula Eidelman. Joy that I will be joining some of my fellow UUs at the university's iSchool as a graduate student this fall. I'm in no way surprised at the overlap between librarianship and related disciplines with UUism, and I'm so glad I will be in such excellent company. If I didn't receive your joy or sorrow in time to share it this morning, please know that this community's thoughts are with you all the same, and we will be happy to include your joy or sorrow in the e-news later this week. I'll also take a moment to lift up all the sorrows that are too painful to share here, all the joys that are too private. And I invite you to take a breath, expand your rib cage, and feel the joy and the weight of all the love and connections held within this community. Together, may we feel the gratitude for joy, the good news and new opportunities, new communities, and the hope for continued healing from unspoken losses. I pray that the love of this community stretches between us in these moments and beyond us always, and allows us to find whatever it is that we need most today. I invite you to please join me now in a time of prayer or meditation.
Hello, this is Michelle Grove, the Interim Director of Religious Education from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. It is really good to be with all of you this morning. I have a letter, an excerpt of a letter that I would like to read for you. It was written by Dr. Teresa Thayer Snyder, who is the former superintendent of the Voorheesville School District in upstate New York. She writes, "Dear friends and colleagues, I am writing today about the children of this pandemic. After a lifetime of working among the young, I feel compelled to address the concerns that are being expressed by so many of my peers about the deficits the children will demonstrate when they finally return to school. My goodness, what a disconcerting thing to be concerned about in the face of a pandemic which is affecting millions of people around the country and around the world. It speaks to one of my biggest fears for children when they return. In our determination to catch them up, I fear that we will lose who they are and what they have learned during this unprecedented era. What on earth are we trying to catch them up on? The models no longer apply. The benchmarks are no longer valid. The trend analysis have been interrupted. We must not forget that those arbitrary measures were established by people, not ordained by God. We can make those invalid measures as obsolete as the crank-up telephone. Resist the pressure from whatever powers that be who are in a hurry to fix kids and make up for the lost time. The time was not lost. It was invested in surviving a historical period of time in their lives, in all of our lives. The children do not need to be fixed. They are not broken. They need to be heard. They need to be given as many tools as we can provide to nurture resilience and help them adjust to a post-pandemic world. Being a teacher is an essential connection between what is and what can be. Please let what can be demonstrated. That our children have so much to share about the world that they live in, and in helping them make sense of what, for all of us, has been unimaginable. This will help them and us achieve a lot more than can be measured by any assessment tool ever devised."
We, as Unitarian Universalists, acknowledge that our circle of care doesn't stop at these four walls. We are deeply connected to the community we find ourselves in and to the wider world. Even as we keep our safe distance, there are countless ways we can find to connect with each other. You're invited to our fellowship hour on Zoom immediately after the service, where you can catch up with all your church friends and talk about what you have planned this week. Remember, too, that we are always collecting for our little free pantries, highlighted here in our pulpit decorations, which provide food and basic supplies to anyone who happens to need them, no qualifications. Know that you are welcome in our support groups, religious education classes, and justice causes. Just keep an eye on your weekly e-news email newsletter for invitations to participate. In fact, this next Sunday night, Valentine's Day, you and all your friends are warmly invited to gather with us online to enjoy the musical stylings and artistic performances of our membership at our very own virtual coffee house. Be sure to put it on your calendar for 7 p.m. next Sunday. As part of our regular Sunday service, in recognition of our very real interdependence and reliance on one another, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. During the month of February, our social action offering will support See You at Home, a nonprofit that serves our neighbors dealing with temporary or long-term homelessness. As this is the first Sunday in February, we'll introduce their work with a short video that gives us an idea of what they do here in Champaign-Urbana.
For those of you that don't know, See You at Home is a small 501c3 not-for-profit homelessness ministry based here in Champaign, Illinois. We now provide 24-hour street outreach, a Phoenix daytime drop-in center, men's and women's emergency shelter. We also provide transitional housing.
I got evicted out of my apartment over there in Urbana almost 2 years ago. For a week and a half, I stayed out in a few parks over in Urbana.
32, gotcha.
I ran into somebody who knew about See You at Home, and they brought me here, fed me, clothed me, gave me a place to sleep, gave me work opportunity. They taught me a lot.
So I came to Champaign with nothing, broken from alcohol and addiction. The clothes on my back, actually that's my one-way bus ticket right there. I was in and out of prison for a lot of years.
God bless you, Steve.
Yeah. Gracias, papi. No problem, bro.
Here we go, I got one, guys. $1?
You've got the double side on the bottom, okay, which gives you some more insulation against the concrete.
I drove around town for 35 years, not really realizing how much our community does have needs for.
Donate, help the homeless.
Help the homeless.
Now I've just got a passion for the homeless cause.
How about $1?
There are a lot of people living on the streets right now that have, they don't know what being welcomed in to a home even feels like. I was homeless, battling drug and alcohol addiction since before I was 10 years old. And See You at Home was able to take me in out of rehabilitation treatment and has placed me in one of their transitional houses and has just taken amazing care of me. I mean, they've helped me learn how to be a human being.
You can give to today's offering by text or through the online portal on our website. Half of your donation will go toward the work of this church and half will go to See You at Home. We invite you to give whatever is generous for you, and know that anything you give will be gratefully received and put to use, helping make a real impact in the world. The offering will now be taken. hard to think of a children's author more well-known or more beloved than Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss, aka Theodor Geisel, wrote almost 50 books over the course of his life and sold over 100 million copies. His imaginative stories and tongue-twisting rhymes are a staple of early childhood reading today. And I imagine that many of you listening can easily bring to mind a favorite Seuss story or two. The Cat in the Hat, or maybe The Star-Bellied Sneetches, or The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. In my house, Seuss books hold the honor of being the very first books I ever read on my own. One Fish, Two Fish, and Hop on Pop were particular early favorites. It's important to note that the legacy of Dr. Seuss has been complicated in recent years, as we look back on the way some of his earliest illustrations veered into racial caricature and ugly stereotypes. Yellow-skinned Asian faces and grass-skirted African tribesmen. Like many beloved saints of the past, there is more to his story than we may first have been taught as children, and the good is always intermixed with the bad. Theodor Geisel, Dr. Seuss, later expressed regret for his shallow and thoughtless depictions, and strove to write books that would teach children the lessons that he had failed to learn earlier in life. The Star-Bellied Sneetches is about the senselessness of bigotry. The Butter Battle book is about the dangers of a Cold War arms race. Yertle the Turtle is about, according to Seuss himself, Adolf Hitler and the abusiveness of authoritarian rule. He was not shy. About his later works, Seuss once said, "I was on the soapbox. I wasn't afraid of preaching, but I was afraid of being dull." It's important to honor the complicated truths about such a beloved figure, but I'm interested today in a different controversy, one that cropped up much earlier in Dr. Seuss's writing career. And it's about how Dr. Seuss was once seen as a terrible threat to the very cause of children's literacy. In fact, the widespread and joyful reading of a book such as On Beyond Zebra, as we did this morning, would once have been considered a worst-case outcome, potentially destroying the minds and futures of our children with its made-up words and its celebration of an alphabet that isn't the ABCs. For as long as there have been children, there have been people with strong opinions about what is best for them. And in the 1940s and 50s, when Seuss began his writing career, there was one accepted right approach to teaching children to read. Children's books followed the Dick and Jane model, which you might remember depending on your own age. These primers were written with a few short words, simple, literal sentences, and lots of repetition. A page from one of these books might read something like, see Jane, oh, see Jane, with an image of a little brown-haired boy pointing at a little blonde girl, see Jane. It's not that they were trying to be boring. They were trying to be simple, digestible, easy for kids to master the necessary basics of reading before giving them something more interesting or abstract. So now imagine how it seemed when into that landscape steps Dr. Seuss with his fantastical and strange illustrations, his inventively incorrect spellings, and words made up whole cloth just in order to fit into bouncy rhyme schemes. His books are such a staple today, it's easy to forget how revolutionary they were, how disruptive, even dangerous they seemed at the time. After all, if we all agree how important it is for kids to learn the basic foundations of reading, their ABCs, their beginners' vocabularies. What on earth are we doing allowing someone like Dr. Seuss to teach them things that are wrong? To trick them into learning made-up words, made-up letters, bad grammar that exists just for the sake of a rhyme. Rather than learning familiar and useful words like look and see and on and off, kids reading Dr. Seuss will learn words like Miss Fuddle-dee-Duddle, a very fancy bird who needs her long tail lifted out of muddledy puddles. And it's true, Dr. Seuss was not using language correctly, as his critics frequently pointed out. What he was doing was playing with it. And playing, it turns out, is an excellent way to get children to learn something. To get anyone to learn something. Kids loved Dr. Seuss's writing, turned his books into instant bestsellers, and slowly the landscape of early childhood learning began to shift around them. Nowadays, children are being read Green Eggs and Ham by parents who can tell them, this is the book your great-grandma read to Grandpa when he was a little boy. Dr. Seuss has stuck around. Despite those early fears, his books did not produce a generation of confused and illiterate children. And those books of silly, made-up rhymes have withstood the test of time. They continue to stand the test of time because there is space in them to find a message for us all, not just for very young children learning to read. Messages about intolerance or materialism or imagination. When in our book this morning, Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell recites the alphabet A to Z and says, now I know everything anyone knows, from beginning to end, from the start to the close, because Z is as far as the alphabet goes. Seuss may have been echoing his own early critics, and he invites them, and us as the readers, to look a bit deeper and see what there is to find when you go beyond everything everyone knows, and explore new ways of learning and knowing. When I first encountered the open letter from a school superintendent that Michelle read for us this morning, I was struck immediately with the truth of the message it contained, and the way in which its author, Dr. Snyder, is so much like Dr. Seuss responding to the Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odells among us. Those who insist that we have a set system of knowledge and assessment, a known alphabet of 26 letters we all must learn, no more, no less. No need to change or expand our standards. No need to look beyond Z. Dr. Snyder writes of children during COVID, there is no assessment that applies to who they are or what they have learned. Their brains did not go into hibernation during this year. Their brains may not have been focused on traditional school material, but they did not sleep either. She reflects that even if the only thing learned this year is how to cope with a loss, how to survive in stress and isolation, that learning is hard-won and legitimate and deserves to be lifted up and acknowledged by us all. There's a great deal happening beyond the letter Z, beyond the letters A, B, C, D, and F. And we may not always know how to see it. There was a piece in the Boston Globe last week surveying high school students and reporting their frustration with distance learning, their feeling of being profoundly unprepared for college, and younger kids feeling similarly unprepared for high school, all the way down to preschoolers' parents worrying about being unprepared for kindergarten. And I'm not here to dismiss that frustration, that fear of falling behind. I know that the pressure young people and their parents feel around education and achievement and the limiting of future opportunity is all too real. But I know that it is real because we as a society make it real. We hold ourselves and each other to standards that often don't leave room for our basic humanity, our different learning styles, different access to resources, different reactions to a society-wide trauma like COVID. We can't seem to help judging each other by where we work, where we study, our grades and accomplishments, and the speed at which we've achieved our goals. But the standards and expectations we exhaust ourselves trying to achieve are not preordained by God or by nature. They are human invented, human constructed, and human reinforced. If every kid in America failed every single test they took this year, would you wonder what's wrong with the kids or wonder what's wrong with the test? What it is exactly that we're measuring and why? High school seniors are rightly terrified of not being prepared for college, whatever that means, because they know they're being judged, held against a standard that none of them could meet, at least not this year. Maybe not any year, because in some ways, the disruption of COVID has brought attention to the way marginalized kids have always been falling behind for some of those same reasons of isolation, upheaval, trauma, and disconnection. And perhaps the standards have always been unreasonable. Dr. Snyder, in her open letter, asks if we are worried about catching students up, what is it we're trying to catch them up to? Other students who are also going through this unprecedented year and falling behind in just as many ways? Catching them up to the expectations that we set based on what a normal year looks like? The expectations based on what a normal student looks like? It is within our power to change those expectations. And I believe we can change. After all, Dick and Jane gave way to Miss Fuddle-dee-Duddle and her muddle-dee-puddles, and the world didn't end. Literacy didn't crumble around us. A change that might at first seem like it will undermine kids learning their fundamentals, like it will lower expectations and allow chaos to reign, might actually be exactly the change needed to open up a whole world beyond knowing everything everyone knows. If you are a student struggling with your grades, if you are a parent frustrated with your kids' lack of focus, if you are a human being living through this past year, I beg you to take a breath, take a pause, and find a way to measure the things that actually matter most. Maybe you haven't learned any of the things you were supposed to learn this year. Maybe you haven't accomplished everything you hoped to accomplish. But the fact that you're still here means you've accomplished something. You have learned something. So if you can, I want you and this whole community to lift up what you have been learning, no matter what it looks like. No matter how far outside the realm of our expectations, no matter how far beyond Z you have to go to find it. There's a young adult who grew up in this congregation, Emma, who graduated high school in the spring and chose not to attend college this year. Instead, she's working at the Red Herring Cafe and spending time developing her interest in drawing, while also learning American Sign Language on the side. There are a myriad of voices out there trying to tell her she should be worried about falling behind, should be worried about the kids younger than her who are advancing ahead along the preordained academic track. But what those voices don't see is the depth of experience being felt alongside a community of coworkers in a busy cafe kitchen. What those milestones and assessments don't capture is her rediscovering a love of art, or the spark of genuine human connection when a deaf man came to the cafe last week and was overjoyed to be able to make his order in his own language. What measures this? What grade could possibly reflect the lives our young people have lived this year? The lives we all have lived. Make no mistake, this isn't just about the kids or even just about the educational system. This is about all of us. This is about the hiring managers, the well-meaning relatives, the church members, the friends. It's about all of us resisting the urge to measure each other with scales and milestones that simply do not apply. Measures that don't account for the reality that we are all living through, or the true depth of the unmeasurable things that we have learned together. The losses and coping mechanisms, the support systems, the technology, the profound human potential for reimagining our world. To paraphrase the doctor himself, there's really no end to the things we might know, depending how far beyond zebra we go. And the world we are building will be something to see. Most people may stop at the Z, but not we. Earlier this week, I invited a member of our congregation to join me in our virtual pulpit and share his own wisdom on the topic of falling behind and how we can expand our view of success during COVID. Please enjoy this reflection from Joe Omo-Asagi, who works as a counselor at Parkland Community College and who's a father to 2 boys.
Those 2 words, falling behind. I don't know what it means, but I know that not everybody starts at the same point. And so we live in a society where everybody is behind the 1%. So are we falling behind, or are we ever going to ever really catch up? Because the system, at least in my view, is stacked against a majority of the people. So we are always behind. Falling behind means that there is a measurement. There is a line that you have to get to. And if you don't get to that line, you're behind the line. And one of the things that this pandemic has shown us is that the unevenness of everything we do in this society. I forgot to mention, I'm president of a mental health board right now. And from a mental health standpoint, one of the things that this has shown us is that we need our schools, we need our community, we need all of us to be fully vested in how our society runs. Mental health is health. And I think when we separate mental health and physical health, and it's not just up to those people, but all of us have to be involved in it. I'll use my 13-year-old as an example. He wants to do a lot of experiments. Right now, we have some maple trees out on our property, and he's tapping the maple trees so that he can make maple syrup. And he talks about temperature matters and how much maple syrup comes out of a tree. I did not know that. I thought you just stuck it in and it would come out. But now after reading about it and know that it has to be at a specific temperature, that is learning. The process of learning is not just something that is one-dimensional and you get a grade at the end of it. In our schools, it would come down to him getting an A, B, C, or D, or an F. But he's learning something. It's a skill that, I mean, I don't know if where or when he would ever use it, but we have maple syrup that he has helped collect and make. So has he fallen behind? I don't know. But is he where he's supposed to be? I believe he's where he's supposed to be because he's still asking those very curious existential questions of why and how. He's still vested in that curiosity and wants to know more. That's how I hope we evaluate each other, based on the knowledge that we can share with one another in those conversations. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to say, hey, I didn't know that, so tell me more. And that's, to me, would be the educational system. It's harder to grade because it's not A, B, C, or D. It's harder to grade because you have almost like you have to present a portfolio of saying, these are the things that I know about myself. These are the things I want to share with you. These are the things that matter to me. And this is what I have learned in the process of being in this classroom for the last 12 weeks or so. And that's important. I hope we as parents are making the right decision to have our children be in a place where they can ask questions and receive feedback. And the feedback isn't just you have to, but the feedback is saying, what do you think? Why, how, what, if, and when. The good news is that we're still talking. The good news is that we are open to new ideas. The good news is that we are still curious and we want to know and we want to be better.
May the profound disruption of this year force us to pause and take stock of our assumptions. May it challenge us to reach beyond what we know, beyond what we think the next generation needs to know, and how we think we need to be measuring each other. May we find a world on beyond COVID in which the models no longer apply, the trend analyses are interrupted, and the old ways are as obsolete as a crank-up telephone. A world in which Dick and Jane make way for Miss Fuddle-dee-Duddle. A world in which resumes make way for maple syrup and conversations held in sign language over a cup of soup. Our closing words today come from UU Minister Reverend Gretchen Hawley. She writes, "Be generous with your dreaming and brave. All paths to the future are born in this courage of imagination, this willingness to shed, to salvage, to start again, to be this blessing for each other, to be this blessed. Amen."
We extinguish this chalice with these shared words written by our minister, Reverend Elizabeth Sally Jones. extinguisheth this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.